Hello, my name is Aric Jorn, and I sculpt myth, but specifically those myths of Scandinavia between the 8th and the 11th century, which is what most people think of as the Viking Age. So this ship is called Skithblathnir, and Skithblathnir was the result of a competition of sorts. Loki had gone out and pitted two groups of dwarvish smiths against each other into a contest to see who could craft the most magical gifts for the gods. And one of the gifts was this ship, and it was given to the god Frey, or Freyr. And the ship was special in that it was the finest of ships, as we learn in the poems. It was big enough to carry all of the gods, but when it wasn't in use, it could be folded like a cloth until it was so small that Freyr could stick it into his pocket and carry it around. An odd way that the MiniMyth Collection started, I was doing a show in Western Michigan called Krazel in St. Joe, and they put a challenge out to artists to create very small pocket-sized art that could be appealing to young people and get them excited about collecting art. And I had just read, or reread, the Poetic Edda, which is sort of the holy grail of stories from Norse mythology. And in there, they describe these little golden chess pieces that are found by the gods. And each one is in the likeness of one of them. And so I thought, that is my series, that's what I'm gonna make. And from that point, that was a little over 3 years ago, I have committed to making every single piece in that set. Oh, there's a good question. That most closely resembles myself. Well, it's not going to be Freya. I don't have enough of a beard for Thor. I would probably say maybe Bragi. Bragi is the poet of the gods. He's the storyteller, which I think both in appearance and also in function is somebody that I identify very closely with, being a weaver of tales. So this piece is Hugin, and Hugin was one of two ravens that belonged to the god Odin. And Hugin and his brother Munin were put out every morning to fly around the world, collect the news of the day, and report it back to Odin. So in a way, they were the world's first journalists, I guess you could say. And their names, Hugin and Munin, actually translate to thought and memory. As far as a favorite myth, that's really a tough one. But I have to say that the first one to spring to mind was the rivalry between Thor, the Thunderer, the one with the big hammer, Mjolnir, and his arch nemesis, Jormungandr, who was the Midgard serpent. And there's one story where he goes out on a fishing boat because he wants to capture his nemesis, who lives under the ocean, and is so big, in fact, that he actually encircles the entire world. And he goes out into this boat, baits up his hook, throws it out into the water, and of course, eventually Jormungandr does take the bait and clamps onto this hook, at which point Thor starts mightily tugging on this fishing pole, fishing rod, and pulls so hard that his feet actually go through the bottom of the boat, and he has to give up the chase and paddle back to shore. The two will meet again in the end, and neither one of them will come out of that fight. But I think that first encounter is a wonderful little story. Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of research that goes into it, which is actually it's fascinating to see how much detail we can parse out of what is really a very fragmentary or very fragmented collection of myths. Because the Norse were an oral tradition, they didn't have these stories written down. In fact, they weren't written down until 100 or 200 years later. So it's as though if I were to recommend you read a particular novel, say Tale of Two Cities, but the only copy of it you could find only had 15 pages of it left intact. Could you understand the full story? Could you piece it together? That's very much the challenge we face when looking at Norse mythology. We have little snippets and we have to try to make sense of them. So the pieces behind me are actually variations of a single piece that I call Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil was the world tree. So in Norse mythology, they believed in 9 realms, 9 distinct worlds. And this tree, a cosmic size ash tree, is the thing that bound them all together. And so by traveling along the branches of Yggdrasil, you could get from one world to the next. And in this series, being that it is a tree, I decided to present it in its 4 aspects or through the 4 seasons. So you have, of course, winter, spring, summer, and fall. Having public artwork is essential to continuing to grow a healthy community locally and society at large. You can't rely on people making the effort to go to a place like a museum that is dedicated to that kind of work. Having work in the public space is vital. If somebody comes to City Hall and walks through my exhibit here, I hope that the one thing that they get out of it is perhaps a slightly better understanding of who the Vikings were or what Viking mythology is, and perhaps a curiosity to learn more. Actually, not only about Viking mythology, but perhaps it inspires them to research their own heritage and the mythology of their own ancestors.